A Journey Through the Night. I never imagined I'd one day be sharing my story with the world, but here I am. At 47, I find myself navigating the complexities of life, a divorce behind me, a teenage son by my side, and a routine that often feels unyielding. Every night I work as a nurse on the night shift, and with every shift I witness incidents that challenge my beliefs and stretch my capacity for compassion. The unusual hours, the constant exhaustion, and the weight of the experiences eventually seep into my very being. Outside of work, life sometimes feels like a monotonous loop: go to work, come home, try to sleep, and then repeat it all over again. Yet, even in the midst of such routine and hardship, I've discovered a beacon of hope in the most unlikely of places: bowling. It might sound ordinary, even reminiscent of the activities many associate with quieter moments of their grandparents' past, but it became my escape. With a newfound passion, I joined a local league last year just to kill some time. To my astonishment, I discovered that I was not only good at it, but I even qualified for an official tournament 3 hours away, a tournament for which I had dedicated months of practice. For a moment, it felt as though I was reclaiming a piece of my life before the divorce, reconnecting with the vibrant energy of my former self. However, the anticipation was soon balanced by the responsibilities of being a parent. My teenage son, who struggles with his own rebellious streak, needed more attention than ever. I remembered all too well the previous time I had left him alone. Upon returning home, I found that a friend had inadvertently caused significant damage to our garage while attempting to entertain him. Determined not to repeat that experience, and with the tournament looming, I made the choice that best honored both my commitment to my dream and my responsibilities as a mother. I arranged for the two of us to spend the weekend at a hotel near the tournament venue. The hotel had an inviting indoor pool, a small luxury that promised a temporary reprieve from our busy lives. That morning, I rose early. After a gentle stretch, I went to rouse my son from his deep sleep. He lay curled beneath the covers, reluctant to leave the warmth of his bed. With a quiet, encouraging persistence, I assured him that breakfast awaited, a moment of calm before our respective journeys resumed. Hearing him murmur something about pancakes, I knew he was awake and, in his own way, excited. We made our way to the hotel restaurant where a typical breakfast buffet awaited us. The room was filled with classic items: pancakes drenched in syrup, an assortment of freshly prepared omelets and eggs, and even a modest selection of crispy bacon. My son piled his plate high with pancakes, each bite a gentle reminder of simpler pleasures, while I opted for a well-balanced omelet. We sat together in a comfortable silence, enjoying the quiet of the morning and the shared moment of normalcy. After our meal, I asked if there was anything he wanted to do before I had to return to the bowling alley. His eyes lit up immediately as he mentioned a nearby mall with a specialty store he'd been eager to visit. The prospect of finding a long-sought game sparked a glow in him, and for a brief moment, we both enjoyed the anticipation of an adventure amid our hectic lives. Even in a world that often feels as repetitive as a worn-out record, mornings like these remind me that life still holds moments of unexpected beauty. It is in these stolen moments, between the long, exhausting nights at work, the fleeting escapes at the bowling alley, and the tender, shared breakfasts, that I find the strength to continue. They are the gentle affirmations that, despite the hardships, the routine can be punctuated by fragments of happiness, hope, and the reaffirmation of love for a son who, in his unique way, reminds me each day why I press on. As I drove to the bowling tournament that morning, every turn of the road symbolized a step toward reclaiming a part of who I once was, a person filled with passion and dreams rather than only duties and exhaustion. The tournament was not just a competition, it was a testament to resilience, a tribute to the idea that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, there can be moments of triumph and renewal. In sharing my story, I invite you to see that even when life seems to be on an endless loop of duty and sacrifice, there is always the possibility of rediscovering yourself in the most unexpected places. Whether through a passion like bowling or a shared breakfast that warms the heart, these experiences weave together the narrative of our lives and remind us that every day holds the potential for a new beginning. A day of highs and lows. I always believed that sharing my personal journey was something I'd never do, but here I am, opening up about the twists and turns that have defined my life. Recently, a day filled with unexpected events reminded me of both the weight of responsibility and the bright sparks of joy that keep me going. As a parent, I try to provide every opportunity for my son, even when it means making sacrifices that stretch my budget and my heart. A small indulgence at the mall. That day began when my son, ever thoughtful and seldom asking for much, mentioned he had been dreaming of a particular game. We drove to the mall on a busy afternoon, with the corridors thronged by people and the hum of everyday life all around us. Our destination was clear: GameStop. As soon as we stepped inside, his eyes lit up when he discovered an old used game, priced inexplicably close to $60. I was taken aback by the cost. It was more money than I usually felt comfortable spending, but his excitement was undeniable. That genuine, heartfelt smile on his face made every sacrifice feel worthwhile. With a resigned sigh and a deep sense of responsibility, I reached for my wallet, paid for the game, and treasured the glow of gratitude and delight in his eyes. Moments of connection. After our stop at GameStop, we spent several hours meandering through the busy mall. We window shopped and observed the lively crowd. Each step and every shared glance evoked fond memories of simpler times, moments before teenage challenges set in. That rare, uninterrupted time just between the two of us was invaluable. It reminded me of our earlier days together and rekindled feelings of closeness and care that I feared were being lost as he grew older. A challenging night at the bowling alley. Later that evening, I returned to the bowling alley, rejuvenated by the day's connection with my son. I felt rested and ready to give my best at the tournament. Yet, life has its own unpredictable rhythm. Despite my renewed energy, the combination of lingering fatigue and mounting stress affected my performance. I slipped from a position of promise in second place down to finishing fifth. It was a hard blow, and though frustration attempted to seep in, I reminded myself that setbacks were only temporary. One of my colleagues from the league, Sarah, emerged victorious in the tournament, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. Sarah's hard work and perseverance had paid off, and her win was a moment for all of us to celebrate. After the award ceremony, a group of us decided to go out for a little celebration. Their invitation was irresistible, especially knowing the venue was conveniently located right across from our hotel. A convivial atmosphere spread as we gathered at a small bar. There, amidst laughter, shared memories, and clinking glasses, I let myself unwind a bit. Although I usually preferred moderation, that night I allowed myself more than just one glass of wine, embracing the light-hearted spirit of the evening. A quiet return and reflections in the night. As the clock neared 1 a.m., I found my way back to our hotel. My son was already asleep in his room, the soft glow of the TV illuminating his peaceful face. A sense of calm and deep maternal love washed over me as I quietly closed his door and retreated to the bathroom for a quick change into comfortable pajamas. Back in my room, I settled into bed, pulling the covers up and attempting to focus on a movie playing quietly on the TV. However, sleep eluded me. My mind began to wander through the events of the day, the mall adventure, the game, the ups and downs at the bowling alley, and the celebration that temporarily lightened my burdens. At around 3 a.m., the gentle sounds of my son stirring in his bed drew my attention. I leaned over to check on him and noticed the simple, rhythmic movement of his blanket as he slept, each small motion affirming the reality of our life together. In that quiet moment, I was overwhelmed not by loneliness or regret but by a profound mixture of gratitude and introspection. I reflected on the challenges of my daily routine, the demanding shifts at work, the weight of responsibilities, and the stresses that can sometimes lead to unexpected moments of vulnerability. Yet I also recalled the undeniable moments of tenderness, his excited smile at the mall, the shared hours of window shopping, and the comforting silence when we sat together over breakfast. A reaffirmation of love and purpose. Lying there, I realized that amidst the stresses of life, these quiet moments carried an intrinsic, healing power. They reminded me why I press forward each day. My son, his happiness, his resilience, and even his quiet, restless movements in the early hours, was a beacon of hope. I recognized that every trial, every sacrifice, was ultimately an investment in both his future and my own journey of self-rediscovery. At that late hour, with the soft murmur of the television playing in the background, I made a silent vow to cherish every moment we had together. I decided to learn from each setback, using them as stepping stones toward personal growth. The day had taught me that even when life feels overwhelming, when responsibilities weigh heavily and dreams seem distant, there is still space for joy, connection, and the promise of tomorrow. In the stillness of that night, as I fought to steal some rest, my heart was filled with a tender hope that each day, no matter how challenging, carries with it the possibility of new beginnings, unexpected victories, and the ever-present bond between a parent and a child. Kept wondering, is he ever going to win? Guess it was the wine or maybe just the loneliness, but I couldn't take it anymore. I blurted out, "Do you need any help with that?" I was thinking if he said no, I could just pretend I was talking in my sleep, but to my surprise he said yes. And that's when it hit me, what am I going to do now? That single word, yes, hung in the air, a stark, undeniable truth. It was like a switch had been flipped, a barrier broken, the ifs and the should has faded away, replaced by a strange sense of inevitability. It was as if I was watching myself from a distance, a spectator in my own life. I felt a strange detachment, a sense of unreality. It was as if I was stepping out of my body, leaving behind the constraints of morality and societal expectations. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely numb, and walked toward his bed. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the TV, casting long distorted shadows that danced across the walls. I stopped at the edge of his bed, my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a palpable warmth that drew me closer. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the edge of the blanket, a silent question hanging in the air. Then slowly, deliberately, I reached out and pulled the covers down just enough to reveal him. He lay there, his eyes wide, a mixture of surprise and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. His hand was still wrapped around himself, a silent testament to the act I had interrupted. Stood there for a moment, just looking at him, trying to process what was happening. It was like looking at a stranger, a version of my son I had never seen before, for it was a strange mix of familiarity and unfamiliarity, a blurring of the lines between mother and something else. I felt a pull, an almost irresistible urge to touch him. I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly, and gently took his hand away. His skin was warm, slightly damp, the sensation sending a shiver down my spine. I whispered, my voice barely audible, "Let me help you." With that I lowered my gaze, my eyes tracing the lines of his body, the subtle curves and angles that were both familiar and strangely new. I could see the evidence of his arousal, the subtle changes that marked the transition from boy to man. I began to move closer, the air thick with unspoken desires and forbidden thoughts. I watched as my own hand began to move, my fingers tracing slow, deliberate patterns along his length. It was soft and yet so firm, the contrast was intoxicating. I felt my own breath quickening, my own body responding to the forbidden touch. I watched as the pre-cum began to appear, a glistening pearl at the tip. I leaned in, my tongue darting out to taste it, the salty tang sending a jolt of electricity through me. He jerked slightly at the contact, a soft gasp escaping his lips. "Do you want me to?" I whispered, my voice husky with desire. He nodded, his eyes fixed on mine, a silent plea in their depths. I lowered my head, my lips brushing against his skin, the sensation sending a wave of heat through me. I wrapped my lips around him, the taste and texture sending a shiver of pleasure through my whole body. As I moved, I felt his hands move to my hair, gently pulling. I told him with a low, husky voice that if he pulled he might like what happened. He pulled slightly, and I felt a renewed surge of desire. I told him harder, and he did. I squeezed him in return. The sensations were Overwhelming, a mix of pleasure and guilt. Of desire and shame. It was like being caught in a storm, tossed and turned by forces beyond my control. I felt him tense, his body shuddering as he reached his climax. His release was powerful, a surge of warmth that filled my mouth, a taste that was both familiar and forbidden. Afterwards there was a moment of stunned silence. We lay there, our bodies intertwined, our breaths mingling. In the quiet room the air was thick with unspoken emotions, with the weight of what we had just done. We can't make a habit of this, I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. I knew it was a lie, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of normality, but the words felt empty, hollow, like a promise I knew I couldn't keep. We tried to talk, to make sense of what had happened, but words seemed inadequate. The emotions were too raw, too complex, too tangled, and then, as if drawn by an invisible force, we found ourselves drawn back to each other, the desire reigniting like a wildfire. He asked me to again, and I found myself unable to refuse. The guilt was still there, a nagging voice in the back of my mind, but it was drowned out by the overwhelming surge of desire. Oh my God, I thought he's ready again. I wondered if it was a good idea that he had already come, and then my mind began to race with other ideas. The lines between mother and son, between right and wrong, were blurred, distorted, almost non-existent. We were caught in a whirlwind of forbidden desires, a dance of passion and guilt, a secret that would forever bind us together. So there we were, after everything, the air in the room thick, heavy with unspoken emotions, with the weight of what we'd done. I knew deep down that what had happened was wrong, morally, ethically, every which way you could think of, but the guilt, that heavy, suffocating feeling, was fleeting. It would come in waves, crashing over me and then recede, leaving behind a strange, almost unsettling sense of anticipation. I kept telling myself this can't happen again. I tried to reason with myself, to find some way to reconcile what we done with the reality of our relationship, but the truth was the lines had been blurred, maybe even erased, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to erase them. It was like a dark secret, a forbidden thrill that pulsed beneath the surface of our everyday lives. The guilt, the shame, they were there, lurking in the shadows, but they were overshadowed by a strange, almost addictive sense of power and desire. I knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something different, something complicated, something dangerous, something thrilling. I found myself thinking about other things, other possibilities, other ways to explore this newfound dynamic. I started to think about the next time and what that might look like. I thought of new ways to touch, new ways to explore, new ways to break every single rule we'd ever known, and that's when the truly naughty ideas started to creep in. Ideas that made my heart race, ideas that made my skin tingle, ideas that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. I started to think about, what if we did this again, but somewhere else? What if we pushed the boundaries even further? What if we? So here's my question for you. What would you do if you found yourself in a situation like this, caught in a whirlwind of forbidden desires? What would you do? Would you run? Would you try to forget, or would you explore? Leave to forget, or would you explore? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Secrets and Cheating Stories for more shocking stories and real confessions.